The stars had always been cold, but today they felt colder than ever. Fleet Admiral stood at the window of his ship, looking out at the massive space station that floated before him. The Concord Station was the largest structure ever built by any species in the galaxy. It was home to the Galactic Concord, an alliance of 17 ancient civilizations that had ruled the stars for thousands of years. Humanity was not part of this alliance. Humanity was young. Humanity was small. Humanity had only left Earth 300 years ago, and in the eyes of the galaxy, they were nothing more than children playing in a universe they did not understand. Was 62 years old. He had gray hair and tired eyes. He had served in the Earth Defense Force for 40 years, but he had never fired a weapon in anger. He was a diplomat, not a warrior. He believed in peace. He believed that words could solve problems that weapons could not. Today, he would test that belief. His aide, a young woman named Han, walked up beside him. She was nervous. He could see it in the way she held her tablet, gripping it too tightly. "Admiral, are you ready?" she asked. Did not answer right away. He thought about the reports he had read. 3 human colony worlds had been attacked by the Empire. There were in species, creatures with hard shells and sharp claws and eyes that showed no emotion. They had been conquering and enslaving other species for 10,000 years. No one had ever stopped them. No one had ever tried. 2 million humans had been taken. Men, women, children. They were now slaves, working in mines and factories until their bodies broke. The lucky ones died quickly. The unlucky ones lived for years. Closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "I am ready," he said. The shuttle ride to the station was quiet. Tried to make conversation but was lost in his thoughts. He thought about his daughter, who lived on one of the colonies that had been attacked. She had escaped, but many of her friends had not. She had called him crying, asking him why the galaxy would not help them. He had no answer for her then. He hoped he would have one today. The Concord Assembly Chamber was enormous. It was a circular room with seats rising up in tiers, like an ancient Roman arena. Each of the 17 species had their own section, filled with delegates and advisors and guards. The ceiling was made of glass, and through it could see the stars. He walked to the center of the room to a small platform where speakers addressed the assembly. He felt very small. He felt very alone. The delegates watched him with expressions ranging from boredom to amusement. Some of them had never seen a human before. To them, he was a curiosity, nothing more. The assembly speaker, a tall being made of living crystal, called for silence. "The representative from Earth may speak," it said, its voice like wind chimes. Cleared his throat. He had prepared a speech, but now, standing here, the words seemed inadequate, so he spoke from his heart instead. "I come before you today not as a warrior but as a father," he began. "Not as a commander but as a man who has seen too much suffering. The Empire has attacked our worlds. They have taken our people. 2 million souls now suffer in chains, crying out for help that does not come." He paused, looking around the room. "We are a young species, we know this. We have only been among the stars for a short time. We do not have the power we do not have the ancient wisdom of this assembly. But we have something that I believe matters more. We have hope. We have the hope that the galaxy is not as cruel as it sometimes seems. We have the hope that there are those who will stand against evil, even when it is easier to look away." The ambassador shifted in its seat. It was a massive creature, twice the size of a human, with 4 arms and mandibles that clicked together when it was annoyed. Right now, it was very annoyed. Continued, "I am not here to demand action, I am here to ask for it. I am here to beg if I must. Please help us. Intervene. Stop before more innocents die." He took a deep breath before speaking his next words. "But I also come with a warning. Not a threat, but a warning. If the conquered will not act, humanity will be forced to defend itself. And I do not want that. Because I know what we are capable of. I know what we have done to each other throughout our history. I know the darkness that lives inside us, the violence that we have spent centuries trying to control." His voice grew quiet. "Stop them now, please. I am asking for mercy, not for us, for them. Because if you do not stop them, we will, and we do not wish to become what war will make us." Silence filled the chamber. For a moment, thought his words had reached them. For a moment, he had hope. Then the ambassador began to laugh. It was an ugly sound, a wet clicking that echoed through the chamber. Other delegates joined in. The laughter spread like a disease, filling the room with mockery and contempt. The ambassador rose from its seat and pointed one of its 4 arms at. "Tiny human," it said, "soft flesh, short lives, you threaten us. You beg us for mercy. Look at yourself. You are nothing. Your species is nothing. You exist because we allow you to exist. Your colonies burn because we wish them to burn. Your people serve us because that is the natural order of things." The ambassador's mandibles clicked together in what might have been a smile. "Go home, little human. Go home and tell your people to accept their place. You are slaves. You have always been slaves. You just did not know it yet." The laughter grew louder, stood alone in the center of the chamber, surrounded by creatures who saw him as less than an insect. He thought about arguing. He thought about pleading one more time. But he saw the truth in their eyes. They would never help. They did not see humans as worthy of help. They did not see humans as worthy of anything. Bowed his head, not in shame but in sorrow. Sorrow for what was about to happen. Sorrow for the lives that would be lost. Sorrow for the darkness that humanity would have to embrace. He turned and walked toward the exit. As he reached the door, he paused and spoke one final sentence. His voice was quiet, barely above a whisper, but the chamber's acoustics carried it to every ear. "Then God forgive us for what comes next." The laughter followed him out of the chamber. It followed him to his shuttle. It followed him all the way back to his ship. But did not hear it anymore. He was already thinking about the message he would send to Earth. He was already thinking about the orders that would be given. He was already thinking about the war that was about to begin. The galaxy had laughed at humanity's request for mercy. They would not be laughing for long. Defense Minister was sitting in her office when the message arrived. It was late at night on Earth, and the city outside her window was quiet. She had been reading reports about refugee camps, about the survivors who had escaped the attacks. The numbers were terrible. The stories were worse. Her tablet beeped, a priority message from Admiral. She read it 3 times to make sure she understood. Then she sat back in her chair and closed her eyes. They had laughed. The most powerful civilizations in the galaxy had laughed at humanity's pain. They had called humans slaves. They had told them to accept their place. Was 54 years old. She had spent her entire life working for peace. She had built schools and hospitals on colony worlds. She had negotiated trade agreements that brought prosperity to millions. She had never wanted war. She had always believed that violence was the failure of imagination. But she was also the daughter of colonists. Her parents had died on Horizon Ivy, one of the worlds they had attacked. She had been off-world when it happened, attending a conference on Earth. By the time she heard the news, her childhood home was ash and her parents were gone. She thought about them now. She thought about her mother's laugh and her father's gentle hands. She thought about the garden they had built together, the flowers that bloomed in soil from a world that no longer existed. Then she thought about the 2 million humans in chains, the children who would grow up knowing nothing but pain, the families torn apart, the lives destroyed. She opened her eyes and made a decision. The United Earth Council met in emergency session 2 hours later. The council chamber was filled with the leaders of humanity, representatives from every nation and colony. They had all seen the message. They had all heard about the laughter. Stood before them and spoke clearly. "The Galactic Concord has refused to help us, to continue their attacks. As of this morning, a 4th colony has gone silent. We believe it has fallen." Murmurs of anger and fear spread through the chamber. "We have a choice to make," continued. "We can accept our fate. We can let the take our people, destroy our worlds, and reduce us to nothing, or we can fight." An old man in the front row raised his hand. He was President Moon, the leader of the Korean Federation and one of the most respected voices on the council. "Minister," he said, "we all want to fight, but how? They have thousands of warships, we have a few hundred. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. How can we possibly win?" Looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at the other council members, one by one. "What I am about to tell you is classified at the highest level. Only 12 people in all of human civilization know what I am about to share." She took a deep breath. 200 years ago, when humanity first began to explore the stars, our leaders made a decision. They looked at the galaxy and saw the truth. They saw ancient empires that conquered and enslaved without mercy. They saw species that had been wiped out simply for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. They saw a universe where the weak did not survive. Pressed a button on her tablet, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. So they did what humans have always done when faced with danger. They prepared. They hid their strength. They pretended to be weak while building something strong. The hologram showed a map of the solar system. Then it zoomed out, showing hidden locations throughout human space. Asteroid fields, dead moons, empty regions of space that everyone thought were worthless. For 2 centuries we have been building, in secret, in silence, waiting for the day when we would need to defend ourselves. She pressed another button. The hologram changed to show ships, massive ships, warships bigger than anything the galaxy had ever seen, dreadnoughts the size of cities, carriers that could hold 10,000 fighters, weapons platforms that made the fleet look like toys. The council chamber erupted in shock and disbelief. "This is Project," said, "named after the ancient warriors of Korea who protected their kingdom against impossible odds. 10,000 warships, weapons that the galaxy cannot imagine, technology that we have developed in secret while pretending to be centuries behind." President Moon stood up, his face pale. "Why?" he asked. "Why did we hide this? Why did we let our people die when we had the power to protect them?" His voice was sad when she answered. "Because we hoped we would never need it. Because we believed that if we showed our strength, the galaxy would see us as a threat and destroy us before we were ready. Because we wanted peace, not war." She looked at the hologram of the fleet. "But peace is no longer possible. They have made that clear. The conquered has made that clear. We asked for mercy and they laughed." She turned back to the council. "I am asking for your vote. Do we activate Project? Do we go to war?" The vote was unanimous. Far away, on a remote listening post at the edge of human space, Captain Park was monitoring routine communications when her sensors detected something strange. Ships were appearing out of nowhere, jumping in from hidden locations throughout the galaxy. At first, she thought it was an attack. She reached for the alarm. Then she looked closer at the ship signatures and froze. They were human ships, but they were unlike any human ships she had ever seen. They were massive, powerful, and there were thousands of them. Her commanding officer, Colonel, walked into the control room. He was an old man with white hair and a face full of scars from battles long past. He looked at the sensor readings and nodded slowly. "Sir," said her voice shaking, "what is this? Where did these ships come from?" Looked at her with eyes that held 30 years of secrets. "From patience," he said, "from fear, from the hope that we would never need them." He put a hand on her shoulder. "Get ready, Captain. We are going to war." On Earth, watched the fleet assemble through a live feed. 10,000 ships moving together like a single organism. The greatest military force humanity had ever created. She thought about her parents. She thought about the 2 million slaves crying for help. She thought about the laughter of the conquered assembly. Then she gave the order. All ships set course for space. Operation Reckoning has begun. The human armada moved through the stars like a tide of steel and fire. They had asked for peace. They had begged for mercy. They had been laughed at and dismissed. Now they would show the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of, and the galaxy would never laugh at them again. The Emperor sat on his throne and laughed. His throne room was enormous, built from the bones of species his ancestors had conquered. The walls were decorated with the skulls of kings and queens who had dared to resist. For 10,000 years, they had taken what they wanted, and no one had ever stopped them. Now his advisors were telling him that a human fleet was approaching. 10,000 ships, they said, massive weapons, strange technology. The Emperor did not believe it. Humans were weak. Humans were soft. Humans were food and labor, nothing more. This fleet, whatever it was, must be a trick, a desperate attempt to scare them into releasing their slaves. "Send our armada," the Emperor commanded. "Destroy them. Bring me the human commander alive. I want to watch them beg before I eat them." The armada was mighty. 3,000 warships, each one battle-tested and crewed by soldiers who had never known defeat. They moved toward the human fleet with confidence and pride. Commander Shin watched them come. She stood on the bridge of the battleship Unyielding, the flagship of the human vanguard. She was 38 years old, with short black hair and eyes that never seemed to blink. She had been a military officer for 15 years, but she had never commanded a fleet in battle. She had also never slept well since the day her brother was taken. His name was Shin. He was a teacher on one of the colonies they attacked. He taught children how to read and write. He played guitar badly and laughed too loudly and always remembered everyone's birthday. The last message she received from him was a single word, sent as the ships descended on his city: "Run." She had not run, she had waited, she had prepared, and now she was here. "Commander," her tactical officer said, "the fleet is in range." Nodded slowly. She looked at the display showing the enemy ships, 3,000 of them arranged in a classic attack formation. They were confident. They were arrogant. They had no idea what was about to happen. "All ships," she said, her voice calm and cold, "engage." The Battle of the Nebula would be studied for centuries. Military academies across the galaxy would analyze every moment, trying to understand how a young species had so completely destroyed an ancient power. The answer was simple. Humanity had been preparing for war since before they left Earth. Human ships moved in perfect coordination, communicating through networks that updated millions of times per second. They anticipated tactics before they happened. They exploited weaknesses that they did not know they had. Their weapons cut through shields like they were made of paper. They had never faced an enemy like this. They were used to fighting species that surrendered after a few losses. They were used to enemies who feared death. Humans did not fear death. Humans had spent their entire history killing each other in wars that made this battle look small. They had developed weapons that could destroy planets. They had survived plagues that killed billions. They had clawed their way up from nothing, fighting every step of the way. They did not understand this. They did not understand what they had awakened. The battle lasted 11 hours. When it ended, 800 ships were destroyed. 43 human ships were lost. The rest of the armada fled in terror, their confidence shattered. But was not finished. She opened a communication channel to the surviving ships. "This message is for the Emperor," she said. "You have 30 standard days to return every human slave, every single one. I do not care if they are sick. I do not care if they are injured. I want them all returned safely to human space." She paused, letting her words sink in. "For every human not returned, we will take one of your worlds. Not conquer, take. There will be nothing left, not a building, not a tree, not a single living creature. Do you understand?" The Emperor received her message and laughed again. This time, his laughter was angry instead of amused. How dare these insects threaten him? How dare they think they could dictate terms to the Empire? He would show them. He would show the entire galaxy. He ordered his soldiers to gather 1,000 human slaves. He had them brought to a public square on Prime. He set up cameras to broadcast across the galaxy. Then he had them executed, one by one, while he watched and smiled. "This is my answer," he announced to the galaxy. "This is what happens to those who threaten the humans are nothing. They will always be nothing. Their fleet was lucky once. They will not be lucky again." On the bridge of the Unyielding watched the broadcast in silence. Her officers watched with her. Some of them were crying. Some of them were shaking with rage. Felt nothing. She had gone somewhere deep inside herself, to a place where emotions could not reach. When the broadcast ended, she turned to her tactical officer. "Set course for Prime's third moon," she said. The moon was a military stronghold. 2 million soldiers were stationed there. It was the heart of their military power, the symbol of their strength. The human fleet surrounded it in less than a day. They did not demand surrender. They did not attempt to negotiate. They simply got into position and waited. Lieutenant was 25 years old. He had joined the military because he wanted to see the stars. He had trained to be a weapons officer because he was good with computers. He had never killed anyone. Now he sat at his console, staring at the firing command. "Lieutenant said, 'You have your orders.'" His hands were shaking. He thought about the 2 million lives on that moon. He thought about the 1,000 humans who had just been executed. He thought about all the slaves still in chains, hopping for rescue. He pressed the button. The weapons that fired were not like anything the galaxy had ever seen. They were the result of 200 years of secret research, of humanity's darkest imagination turned into reality. The moon did not explode. That would have been too quick. Instead, it cracked. Great fissures spread across its surface like a breaking egg. Fire poured from the cracks, fire so hot it turned rock into gas. The atmosphere burned away in seconds. The surface melted into a sea of liquid stone. 2 million died in less than a minute. There were no survivors. There was nothing left to survive in. Stared at his screen, watching the moon die. He would never forget what he saw. He would never stop seeing it every night in his dreams. Opened a communication channel again. 29 days, she said. The next one will be a populated world. Across the galaxy, the Emperor had stopped laughing. For the first time in his long life, he felt something he had never felt before. Fear. The Galactic Conquered watched the destruction of the moon with horror. The species who had laughed at humanity now stared at their screens in disbelief. What had they awakened? What had they done? The Galactic Conquered assembly chamber was silent. No one laughed now. No one whispered or shifted in their seats. Every delegate sat perfectly still, watching the human ambassador with fear in their eyes. Ambassador O stood in the same spot where Admiral had stood 1 month ago. She was a small woman, 50 years old, with gray streaks in her black hair and a face that showed no emotion. She had been present during speech. She had heard the laughter. She had said nothing. Now it was her turn to speak. 1 month ago, my colleague Admiral came before this assembly, she began. He asked for help. He asked for intervention. He asked for mercy. She looked around the chamber slowly. You laughed at him. You called us weak. You called us slaves. You said we should accept our place. The ambassador was not present. The delegation had fled the station days ago, after the third moon was destroyed. We did not want this war, continued. We spent 200 years hoping we would never have to fight it. We hid our strength because we believed that peace was possible. We believed that if we were patient, if we were kind, if we showed the galaxy our best qualities, we would be accepted. She shook her head. We were wrong. The galaxy does not reward kindness. The galaxy does not value peace. The galaxy understands only one thing, power. And now, the galaxy will see our power. She pressed a button on her tablet. A holographic display appeared, showing a map of space. Large portions of it were marked in red. In the past 30 days, the human fleet has destroyed 47 military installations. We have liberated 12 slave colonies. We have freed over 800,000 humans who were held in chains. She changed the display to show images: ships burning, stations crumbling, soldiers surrendering. The emperor refused to return our people. He executed 1,000 slaves to mock us, so we kept our promise. We took their military moon. 2 million soldiers died in less than a minute. The assembly was completely silent. "This is not a threat," said. "This is a demonstration. We are not here to conquer the galaxy. We are not here to replace thee as the dominant predator. We are here to survive, and we will do whatever is necessary to ensure our survival." She looked directly at the assembly speaker. "The conquered had a chance to prevent this. You could have intervened. You could have told them to stop. Instead, you laughed. You watched as our people were taken and tortured and killed, and you did nothing." Her voice grew hard. "Remember that. Remember that you had a choice. Remember that you chose wrong." She turned and walked toward the exit. At the door, she stopped and looked back. "The will fall, that is certain now. What happens next depends on the rest of you. Learn from their mistake. Do not make enemies of humanity." She left. The assembly remained silent for a long time. On the slave world of, General Nam led the ground liberation. Was 60 years old, a career soldier who had spent his life training for a war he hoped would never come. He had commanded simulations and exercises, but he had never seen real combat until now. Nothing had prepared him for what he found on. The slave camps were enormous, stretching for kilometers in every direction. Humans lived in metal cages, packed together like animals. They were fed barely enough to survive. They worked in mines and factories until their bodies broke, and then they were discarded. Soldiers moved through the camps, cutting locks and opening doors. They found people who had forgotten their own names. They found children who had never known freedom. They found the elderly who had given up hope years ago. A young woman grabbed his arm as he walked past her cage. "Is this real?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Is this really happening?" Knelt down so he could look her in the eyes. "It is real," he said. "You are free. You are going home." She started to cry. She had been a prisoner for 8 years. She had been taken when she was 22 years old. She could barely remember what Earth looked like. "I do not have a home," she said. "They destroyed my home. Everyone I knew is dead." Held her hand. "Then we will build you a new home, I promise." He kept walking through the camp. His soldiers followed, helping the freed slaves to shuttles that would take them to medical ships in orbit. Many of them could not walk. Many of them were too weak to stand. In the deepest part of the camp, found the children. They were kept in a separate area, used for the work because their small hands could reach into machines that adults could not. There were hundreds of them, ranging from 5 to 15 years old. One girl sat apart from the others. She was maybe 7 years old with tangled hair and bruises on her arms. She did not react when approached. She just stared at the ground. He knelt beside her. "Hello," he said gently. "What is your name?" She did not answer. "It is okay," said. "You are safe now. I'm going to take you somewhere safe." The girl finally looked at him. Her eyes were empty, hollow, like she had seen too much pain for someone so young. "What is safe?" she asked. Did not know how to answer. He did not know if he could answer. How do you explain safety to a child who has never known it? He picked her up and carried her to the shuttle himself. She weighed almost nothing. She did not struggle or cry. She just rested her head against his shoulder and closed her eyes. Had commanded armies. He had ordered the deaths of millions of. He had watched their moon burn without feeling anything. But now, carrying this broken child through the ruins of a slave camp, he felt tears running down his face. This was what they were fighting for, not victory, not revenge, but this, the chance to save the ones who could still be saved, the chance to give them back something that had been stolen. On the shuttle, a medic tried to take the girl from his arms. She clung to him and would not let go. "It is okay," said, "I will stay with you." He sat with her during the entire flight to the medical ship. He sat with her while the doctors examined her. He sat with her while she fell asleep for the first time in years without fear. He did not speak for 3 days afterward. There was nothing to say. The liberation continued. World after world, camp after camp, humanity freed its people. Some of them died before they could be rescued. Some of them were too broken to ever fully recover. But many of them survived. Many of them would heal. Many of them would go on to live full lives, to have families, to laugh and love and dream again. That was what made the war worth fighting. That was what made the darkness worth enduring. General Nam never forgot the girl he carried out of that camp. Years later, when the war was over, he adopted her. He gave her a name, a home, a family. She grew up to be a doctor. She spent her life helping others heal from trauma. And every year, on the anniversary of her liberation, she called the old general and said 2 words. "Thank you." The war ended not with a great battle, but with silence. The empire, which had terrorized the galaxy for 10,000 years, simply ceased to exist. Their military was destroyed. Their emperor was captured and tried for crimes against sentient beings. He was found guilty and executed, alone and afraid, in a small room on a human space station. The people were scattered across refugee camps on a dozen worlds. They were not killed. Humanity was careful about that line. But their power was broken, their empire was gone, and they would never threaten anyone again. The galaxy watched in silence. The species that had ruled the species that everyone thought was invincible, had been brought down by the weakest, youngest race in known space. The irony was not lost on anyone. 1 year after the war began, Admiral returned to the Galactic Concord Assembly. He walked into the same chamber where he had begged for help. He stood on the same platform where he had been laughed at and mocked. But everything was different now. The delegates rose when he entered. They bowed their heads in respect. Some of them looked afraid. Some of them looked ashamed. All of them understood that the balance of power in the galaxy had changed forever. Looked older than he had a year ago. His hair was, his face more lined. He had seen things that he would never forget. He had given orders that cost millions of lives. But he had also saved his people. He had brought them home. "I did not come here to threaten you," he began. "I did not come here to gloat or to make demands. I came here to tell you what humanity wants." He looked around the chamber. "We want what we have always wanted. We want to trade. We want to explore. We want to learn and grow and share what we discover. We want to be part of this galaxy, not its enemy." He paused. "But let me be clear. We will never again ask for mercy. We will never again explain ourselves to those who see kindness as weakness. If you threaten us, if you attack our people, if you try to take what is ours, we will not negotiate. We will not warn. We will simply end you, and then we will mourn what you forced us to become." His voice softened. "We do not want to be conquerors. We do not want to be destroyers. We want to be friends. We want to be partners. But that is your choice, not ours. We have shown you what we are capable of. Now we will show you who we choose to be." He bowed slightly, a gesture of respect that he did not owe them. "I hope you choose wisely." He left the chamber. This time no one laughed. This time no one said a word. On Earth, Defense Minister resigned from her position. She had done what was necessary, but she could not live with the weight of it. Every night, she dreamed of burning moons and dying soldiers. Every morning, she woke up crying. She spent her remaining years building orphanages for the children rescued from camps. She taught them songs and stories. She held them when they had nightmares. She tried to give them back something that had been stolen. She never spoke about the war. She never accepted any honors or awards. When people called her a hero, she shook her head and walked away. "Heroes do not do what I did," she said once in a rare interview. "Heroes do not order the deaths of millions. I did what was necessary. That does not make me a hero. That makes me a survivor." She died peacefully at the age of 87, surrounded by the children she had helped raise. They named a school after her, and then a hospital, and then a whole colony world. But she would have been happier with no memorial at all. She would have been happier if the war had never happened. Captain Park was promoted to admiral. She was given command of the fleet that now protected human space. She accepted the position because someone had to do it, and she was good at it. But she never forgot what she had seen. She never forgot the ships burning, the planets dying, the screams of as their empire crumbled. She kept a picture of her old listening post on her desk to remind herself of the officer she had been before the war. She hoped she would never have to fire those weapons again. She trained for it anyway. That was her duty now. Commander Shin retired from the military the day the war ended. She had done what she set out to do. She had brought her brother home. She found a small apartment on New Seoul, a colony world that had almost been lost to the. It was quiet there, far from the noise and chaos of Earth. She could see the mountains from her window, and at night, the stars. Her brother came to live with her. He was thin and he woke up screaming most nights. The years in the slave camps had broken something inside him that might never fully heal. But he was alive, he was free, he was home. They sat together at the dinner table on the first anniversary of his liberation. Had cooked his favorite meal, a simple dish that their mother used to make. Ate slowly, carefully, like he still could not believe there would be food tomorrow. Watched him and felt something loosen in her chest, something she had been holding tight for years. She reached across the table and took his hand. "I missed you," she said. Looked at her. His eyes were not empty anymore. They were still sad, still haunted, but there was something else there too, something that looked like hope. "I knew you would come," he said. "I never stopped believing. Even when everything was dark, I knew you would come for me." Squeezed his hand. She did not say anything. There was nothing to say. Outside, the stars shone cold and bright. The galaxy watched humanity with new eyes, not with contempt, but with respect and fear. Humanity had asked for mercy once. They had begged for help, for understanding, for basic decency. They had been laughed at and mocked and dismissed. They would never ask again. But they would also never forget who they wanted to be. They would never let the war define them. They would build and explore and create. They would reach out to other species with friendship, not threats. And if anyone ever tried to hurt them again, they would remember the burning moon and the scattered empire and the emperor dying alone. They would remember and they would act. Because humanity had learned the oldest lesson in the universe. The galaxy does not reward kindness or punish cruelty. The galaxy simply is. And in a galaxy like that, the only way to survive is to be strong enough that no one dares to make you weak. Admiral lived for another 20 years. He spent them teaching young officers about diplomacy and patience and the terrible cost of war. At the end of his final lecture, a student raised her hand. "Admiral," she asked, "do you regret anything?" Thought for a long time before answering. "I regret that mercy was not enough," he said. "I regret that kindness was seen as weakness. I regret every life lost on both sides, every child left without a parent, every world reduced to ash." He looked out the window at the stars. "But I do not regret fighting. I do not regret protecting our people, and I do not regret showing the galaxy what we are capable of." He turned back to the student. We are not monsters, but we can become them if we must. Every day we choose not to. Remember that. Remember that the choice is what matters. As long as we keep choosing peace, we are still who we want to be. The student nodded slowly. She did not fully understand yet. She was young. She had never seen war. But one day she would remember his words. One day she would understand. And she would make the same choice. Peace, always peace. Until someone forced them to choose otherwise.